Source Nation. Tonight's program was brought to you by KVEL Products, the original all-natural transition from chemical to natural with KVEL Products.
Source Nation, I'm your host, Jaketra Bryant. I want to welcome you to Family Mix Mondays. And we are doing a series where we're talking about mental health in the Black community. And tonight we're going to particularly talk about our Black men. And so we want to really break the generational cycle when it comes to not talking, when it comes to feeling as if it's a sign of weakness and misunderstanding what mental health is versus mental illness and versus just communication, period, and asking for support. And so that's what we're going to be talking about for a few weeks, and we're going to have it from a lot of different ranges. So parents, if you are a parent of a young male or just a parent of a male, period, in college age to high school to elementary to a young adult, this is a great conversation for you and your son to sit down together to talk about what it looks like in mental health, particularly if within the Black community, and how it is not a sign of weakness, but yet there is strength and healing in talking. And so we have Darrell Brooks, who is LPC CSPS, who is going to join us tonight and have a great conversation. But let me tell you a little bit about him first. Darrell earned his master's degree in community mental health counseling at Milan University in 2008. While in school, he led and developed how to counsel in the Black family. He also trained for 7 years in working with individuals that were charged with DUI in Ohio. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia in 2010. While in Atlanta, he worked with several core agencies throughout Georgia. He is currently serving as the immediate past president of the Licensed Professional Counseling Association of Georgia. His term as president began in 2016. The year professional counselors in Georgia received the right, this year, they received the right to receive the diagnosis in the state of Georgia. Mr. Brooks is the first African-American male president in 31 years history of the LPCA of Georgia. And so we have Mr. Brooks tonight. And so, hey, Darrell, how are you?
Hey, fine, Ms. Bryant. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing so well, so well. Getting my life together, my goal.
Definitely. I mean, I really appreciate the topic of tonight, definitely with African-American males, because that's why I came into the field of counseling, because the decision was I was in law school up in Cleveland. And so I changed when I noticed there's a lot of Black attorneys, but there's not enough Black male therapists. And I was working in family court, so I always saw all these young kids coming in with these diagnosis codes of being defiant, intermediate explosive disorder, ADHD. They were on medication, they were not on medications, but their therapist was either a female, Caucasian female, or Caucasian male. So it seemed kind of hard to see if they could relate to that, but I'm not saying that counselors can't relate, but I think that was a calling that brought onto my life to think about making that change when I was clerking for the judge at family court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really serious. I think it's a subject that, like, I remember when I also started having different conversations in the area of Black men or men seeking mental health services, and I started writing different programs, I got a lot of pushback. And one of the reasons I got a lot of pushback, my assumption is, as a Black woman talking about this. And so I wanted parents and just the community as a whole to hear from a Black male who is in the profession, how to encourage them in, and we break a stigma, one, that we can't help each other as Black people, whether you're male or female, but really just kind of the safety of mental health, period. And what do you think are some of the stigmas that people kind of live up to when it comes to men just coming in and asking for help, whether it's counseling or just anything?
Most of the counseling pieces or the issues are pertaining to two things. Let's start with the youth. The youth are already set up with 3 don'ts. Don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. And those are exhibited by, let's say, an average conversation from their mom and significant other, boyfriend, or Mr. James or uncle, whoever they call themselves that come over to visit. And all of a sudden they get into an argument. And the guy says to the woman, you don't tell none of my business to nobody. You don't say nothing to nobody. Whatever happens in this house stays in this house. Right. So now this kid is understanding the rule that don't talk to nobody about what's going on. So that first part of that is etched into them mentally at a young age. Now don't trust becomes now, because if you say something, an accident happened, they go to school with a bruise 5 times or 7 times or 8 times out of 10, what happens is what we're going to do. They're going to call defects, right? So now you're not supposed to trust anybody. What happened to you, and so you're forced to lie, in a sense, say what happened doesn't happen, or you don't say anything. Finally, issue of don't feel comes to the point where if they say, I hate when this guy comes over here, I hate when dad does this, I hate when he does things to your mom, and mom say, don't feel that way, he's just going through some stuff, he'll be all right, he just need to work on himself. So now they have those 3: don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. So for them, when they grow up, it's hard for any male to begin to show their feelings. The only way they show their feelings is in contact sports or any type of sports then, because they take that anger out on the field, as you know, as a counselor and with collegiate athletes as well. A lot of that hatred or anger or rage is played in football because it's a contact sport, or basketball, or anything, or boxing. But at the end of the day, you can see that their emotions are tied to a sport to release that energy, opposed to going and they'll talk to their coaches or something like that. But then they don't want to feel vulnerable. They still want to remain tough. They still want to remain that they can handle themselves. And so counseling to them is that stigma that says, well, if I tell them my business, 2 things they're going to say. One, they're either going to try to put me on medication because I was put on medication when I was a kid, or they're going to tell me certain things that I can't do. And counseling is the opposite. I've been in this field for a long time, and I noticed that if we do more of the cans and less of the can'ts, that helps them understand that this thing can work. Because right now, you can see in the other communities, they'll go to counseling in a minute, right, and be bold about it. I'm going to talk to my therapist, whereas they'll, go see, well, I talk to a life coach, or I talk to someone else. They won't say he's a therapist. So for us in the community, we need to be able to really understanding how counseling is a positive influence and not just a negative influence.
I agree. You're so right. Like in my experience working with the collegiate athletes, so when I do get a black male, I get a black male because I remember this one time I got one because he punched another person, and the sports director sent him to me and said that he needs some type of anger management. And so there's this immediate notion that this person is angry. And so when I got the guy, he was like, I'm not angry. He was like, I just didn't like what he did. And he was like, but I'm not angry, I'm okay. And so he and I began to talk about something on a completely different spectrum. It had nothing to do with that incident, but he wasn't an angry person. He indeed had some other particular things going on, but he wasn't this angry man. And so for that to be like the conclusion, and I'm sure it was the conclusion based on a couple of factors. One is the conclusion based on the factor of like, he is a male. And so you immediately go to they're angry. And then like, oh, we need anger management because like we need to tame this individual. And I think that is like what you're saying, that makes it really hard for people to go in and seek services. If you immediately have this stigma and these answers already given to you, and that's like what's going on with me?
Yeah, that's true. Even with your client, I think the same happened with my client, was that he was playing at a different college, and the college had a new coach came in. So, new coach is going to have his blue chip players and not really concerned about the players that play there unless they really outstanding athlete. But he was in a position that there's a lot of players that can play that position, especially the blue chip player that he promised to get that position. So the coaches put him out there and said he has anger. And I told him, I said, you have to understand that the word anger, the coach can't truly diagnose an anger problem. And that's why I said you need to go to a counselor, because that's when we would use certain test batteries or measurements, or what we use to do the assessment with, to find out where your anger lies and where the history of your anger is, or any type of trauma that happened at the time. So based upon the conversation I had with him, I said, okay, here's what they're going to use this for as anger. So the next time you go somewhere socially and you represent the college or university, if someone tells you you suck and you go off on that person at a bar, or some girl said, I didn't want to mess with you because you're not first string, and you slap that person, okay, now because they said you were angry, you go ahead and you just prove to them that, hey, this is an angry person. This person does not need to be worthy of playing on our team because he cannot control his anger. And so therefore, I talked to him, I said, you have to understand some of the things that they're saying are bait type of questions or bait type of comments that you have to watch very carefully, because now when you go out into the community or you do anything, if you have an anger reaction or negative reaction, it is going to cause some consequences, because first they laid that first little seed of saying, what? He's an angry person.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's so sad about it, because even when we're talking about the whole thing about mental health in the Black community, and particularly with males, and like you said earlier, we're trying to get people in to recognize that mental health isn't anger. Not all the time. You can be angry, but mental health isn't always a drug and alcohol issue. Mental health isn't always hearing voices. That literally it is taking care of everything that comes through your thought process, from adjusting to college, to planning a sport, to switching positions, to leaving home, to all those things, to understanding the pressures that have been placed on you as a Black male. And so I want to talk about how can parents talk to their kids about the generational myths that keep being passed on that are pressure related with being a Black male.
Right. And like I said, it goes back to the home and the community and the communication at home. If the communication at home is negative or forceful, or forcing a person not voice their opinion, but at least have a conversation, then that doesn't give that person the confidence to share. So, for example, you have a son, and you talk to your son probably 30 minutes out of the day. What was your day? How was school? Stuff like that. So he's able to have a dialogue, a conversation. So when he is hurting, he can say, Mom, I'm having some problems. Can I talk to you about it? As opposed to where a lot of times it's you're supposed to be tough. Big men don't cry. You got to deal with that. Or something's going on being bullied at school. They go out there and handle it, and so then he's further embarrassed, because now they're saying he can't handle his own problem. He had to bring his mom or his dad involved, and now things like that escalate to the point where he becomes more withdrawn, saying, I don't really share anything with my parents because it seems like they overreact or not include me into the solution. And then me as a parent with a newly born son, 21 months, I have that same thought process in my mind. It's okay, something happened to him. How do I allow him to go through the process, be able to process his feelings and share those feelings with me in a way that he can be I can see his level of maturity, or I begin to nurture that, and then also provide him the avenues and tools that he needs to handle it himself when he can handle it. Otherwise, he'll be hey, I'll take care of it. But that's what happens when we're so first to be protective of our child or our children that we not allow them to grow, and we also stifle the opportunity to have a good conversation.
I think that's a really good point. I think with me, I remember having a really odd thought process, as a single mother raising a Black male. And one of my reasons that I had such I had a negative thought process, that because of the statistics of people being placed in jail, the statistics of people being placed in not finishing school or having several kids, that I felt this pressure that oh my goodness, I gotta make sure he doesn't go down that path. And then so I took on this huge protective route versus doing a lot of more having conversations and reasons why the conversations are necessary. And I think that's a really vital point, like you're saying, being there and having this open dialogue.
And like I said, even coming from two-parent households and stuff like that, the same thing is even for me, if he doesn't see me protecting his mom or respecting his mom and having a good conversation with his mom, and what we do all the time, every time we come back from work, we do what I call 5, 5, and 5. It started out that way, where we, for 5 days, take 5 minutes out of the day to say 5 positive things. And then we, increase that, just like working out. Next week, 10. Next week, 20. But what it did was it opened up the conversation to when we come home, our conversations are not as negative. There's always something positive However, if we have something to bother us on work or something like that frustrates us, we have a way that we can communicate that and say, you know what, man, even though today I'm just glad that you're here, I really got to talk about this issue. And then if he sees that dialogue between us, when he begins to understand and when he begins to communicate, I think then he can say, well, shoot, can I get involved in that conversation? And that's what I would do with him. Start having that dialogue by positive things. Man, how'd you do today in school? I'm glad you went to school today. You look nice, man. You look cool when you went to school today. You woke up on time and stuff like that. You know, instead of always saying, hurry up, you need to get ready for school. You running late. Come on, man. Now, I'm gonna be honest, as a parent, we probably gonna say that, you know, because there's discipline times. There are times when they're gonna have to feel some sensation on their backside, you know. As long as you don't leave no marks, you're good. But, I'm just joking. But the main thing is to definitely show that there is a side of communication as well as a side of showing the assertiveness skills that we have and not the aggressive skills that we normally show.
Okay. I like that 5-5. I think that's a really great idea. I've heard it in terms of prayer and scripture and just kind of time spent with God, but I've never really heard it in terms of like dedicating that time with your family and that intimacy building up. And I think that will open up a door for people to feel safe and comfortable and see that like it helped to have conversation. And then it becomes then a sense of, I actually know my child. My child is getting to know me, and not like the sense of like, I hear a lot of college students, unfortunately, when they talk about their parents, and it is coming from my Black women mostly, that like their parents really don't know them. They don't know me. And so I think that comes from the lack of conversation happening inside the homes.
Right. And that's where it all begins, because it all starts at home. Because what is most of the children are looking for? If we look at, even though most of our theorists that talk about, like from Erik Erikson to Maslow to Adlerian, they all are at that age between 13 teenage years to adult life. They're looking for that sense of belonging. They want to be a part of or a part of something. That's why they either join sports, clubs. They have their special clique of friends, but they do special things on certain days. Like someone back in the day was like, most of the girls love to shop, or if they play sports, softball team, they always stay together. So you have that sense of belonging because of the limited sense of family to help them belong to something. So there will, men who didn't have fathers in their lives who went down the negative path, join gangs, because then the gang felt like a family. Even in things that's going on now, when we talk about white supremacists, they all said the same thing, is that they didn't have that background from the family. So this part became family, even though the negative parts of it provided them with the hatred of other races. But to them, they'd rather take that because they still going to at least have a niche family who helped them, groom them to be who they are today. So, knowing that in today's era, and especially doing with things when we're doing everything's as inclusive, you have to be that person to understand that the family is going to be the nucleus to give my child or the children or the young males the opportunity to begin to show their independence. By having those dialogues, being able to share, then when something really comes along, you get that. Because we know a lot of kids, even in sports or not even in sports, that have been perped on at school, or something happened where someone might have been molested or something like that, and they had kept it quiet. Mm-hmm. Because someone said, don't tell them, don't tell your parents. But if there was a conversation with my parents, and I have it, it's not even a thought process before it happens. The first thing I am going to do is I'm going to my parents, because I have that good relationship with that dialogue with their parents. Not all the time they're going to do it, and I'm not saying everything's absolute. But we know in counseling, it's just that it helps out the percentages a little bit better for that person to be successful through any type of trauma, if they know that they can go somewhere and unleash that and process it with someone else that can take it with an objective.
Yeah, I think like if people like start seeing, like you said, like there's this huge connection, like how likely are you to feel comfortable going to your parents, and the openness of a conversation, there's this connection that if you are having conversation and open dialogue, then a lot of preventative other things will take its place, like understanding relationships, understanding interactions and behavior with people, how to choose a good set of characters that are very healthy for you in friendships and things like that. The selection process and a lot of these like life skills actually will go hand in hand if different conversations take their place. So you mentioned a lot about like the nuclear family and all these different things with it. Do you think that parents actually, like, if say they aren't aware that there's a generational type of cycle happening with the pressures with providing and the pressures that come from the myths of like the Black men, do you think that parents should actually kind of begin with like a family type of counseling where everyone is just kind of receiving education, and even if the person is in college, just kind of starting with family counseling?
I agree with that, Ms. Bryant, 100%, because here's what happens. A lot of times what they always want to do, and we know that as clinicians, the first thing they say is, well, he has the problem, you need to fix him, okay?
Right.
So let's look at that as cogs on a wheel that connects. So if one is going to be fixed, their mind of thought, if they're used to going a certain way, it's being reversed now. It's changing, it reframes. So when it comes back to the family that's always going the same way, he's going a different way. When they try to connect, there's going to be even more tension because the one is going one direction while the other one's changed the other direction. So when they come back, two things are going to happen. Either that person will conform and go back to his normal way, and as we say, hey, therapy don't work, or there's going to be so much tension that they're going to say, what did you do to my child? Now he's messed up. By taking the family out and having them in counseling, understanding, hey, some of this part is also codependency, even though codependency don't have to relate to substance abuse, but it relates to a normal way of doing things, and then taking one person out of it, changing their alternate set, because that's what our job is. We're going to help them understand a different way of thinking or a different way of interacting. But when they come back to people who are doing the same old, you can't do it. So for an example, it'd be like if you always go to your favorite stop is a restaurant. You go to the restaurant and it's right down the house. All right. Let's say the road is blocked off. You got to find an alternative route. You're getting frustrated trying to find this alternative route to get to your favorite restaurant. Or you say, you know what, man, I ain't going today. Well, all of a sudden you find another route. Say, hey, man, there's a lot of places I didn't even look at. Man, there's a cleaners and so on. Oh, man, this is cool. Go to that route. And then they open back the route up. Sometimes you're going to be like, I like this way or I like that way. So the analogy is that by having other opportunities helps a person think better and become better, because now they see a whole new world or ideas that open up their worldview. It hasn't been this small now. It's been broad. Allowing that to happen helps that person gain maturity, gain insight, and also a better way of understanding how the world works.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I love that analogy. I think that's the problem with the myth of mental health. It's the idea that it means weakness, or that it means something that is not, because maybe somebody did have a negative experience. Like you stated earlier, with DFACS getting involved and other people, like if somebody finds out something and it's like, oh my goodness, now they're reporting me, now my child taken away. So maybe someone did have an experience that was negative as they were taking that route. It takes Black clinicians who are standing up to say, no, that's not actually what mental health is, and having conversations and different like panel symposiums and videos to say, actually, this is what mental health looks like in a very healthy way. And it's actually just a different form of communication that's going to really lead you to more opportunities.
Yeah, Ms. Bryant, I really appreciate it, because like I said, when I first got in this field, it was really not that many of us in there. And I'll be honest, and when I was in school back in Ohio, either I was the only male or the only Black person in the room. Right. And it all started when they talked about my junior high school, and they said, well, these people who go over to this high school are like savages. And I said, well, I went to that high school, and they was like, really? No, you didn't go to that high school. I said, no, I grew up in that neighborhood. You grew up in that neighborhood? I said, I told them where I lived. They were in awe that a person from that neighborhood goes to a school where they're going and learning about counseling. And that's when it made me realize that I had to try something where I got to teach the individuals about my community, because they all had that stigma that they don't need counseling, or it's too strong for counseling, or they all on Ritalin, stuff like that. So that's when I designed How to Counsel the Black Family Symposium. So on that family symposium, I always provided a panel discussion, and I brought Black leaders in the community, from a minister, Islam, any of those individuals come in there and share their insights on the community, but also provided the service of bringing in Black barbers, Black beauticians, and have them talk about hair care, how that helps out, how going to the barbershop, having a conversation at the barbershop, what are things. And so these newly clinicians start seeing ways to how the community does help one another. And we do it in a way that's so natural that for them to even tap in, they would go based on theory, think it's going to work, when actually it doesn't work. You could try to talk to a Seventh-day Adventist about, okay, I want to come meet you on a weekend. Well, that's my religion. What religion is that? They don't know about it. Or if you, or J-Dub. What's a J-Dub? Jehovah's Witness. You don't know about Jehovah's Witness? You know about the, so these were things that I had to explain to them, that this is part of the community. How come Uncle Pete's always in that room and you don't mess with him? Uncle Pete we know Uncle Pete probably have a mental disorder that everybody already understands what he does, but they keep him in the room and feed him there because they don't want him coming out embarrassing them. So that's where we would go in and say, hey man, let me go talk to Uncle Pete. You can try if you want to. So those are the things that I try to bring when how the Council of Black Family came about. And it worked out pretty good for the first couple of years. But in 2010, guess who left Ohio? LeBron James, right? So he left, I left. So I didn't go to Miami. His plane took him there. My plane stopped in Atlanta. So I just planted my flag here, and I didn't go back to Cleveland, only for time to time. And then he's going to LA, and I don't have the money to go out there yet. So I'm doing well here in Atlanta.
Well, I hope you follow Mr. Brooks' dream, not Mr. James' dream.
So you got me on that one. That was a good one.
But I think that's a really good point. Like, I agree. I think like the community there's something natural about like the Black community and coming in as one. But but there's also like this divide. There's also this competition. There's so much that's happening within like our community. But you're right. There are some natural gifts that are present if we all tap into them. And if we all like use our gifts in this natural like part of like the sense of community, then I think we can actually help people talk to kids about like talk to kids about like adjusting or not feeling so much pressure to provide or do certain things. I think like if we all do like come together and really realize that like, man, this is truly a myth, because literally like back in the day, there was a whole lot of sense of community happening within the Black community. Like it was like, okay, well, you don't got it. Well, come on. Like we got our play cousins down the street who will help you with food or help watch your kids while you go to work. So there is always this sense of like togetherness, a sense of like support that's being really lost. And I think it is becoming where everyone's like, well, every man for themselves type of thing. It's falling a lot on a Black man where you're seeing this independence.
Like I said, but it comes from, and I have to say it just comes from not having a father in the home. And a lot of people say, well, that's just cliche, but there are documents, there's statistics that prove that. Because here's the situation. Normally what happens when they say, well, now you're the man of the house. Like, he's 12. How's he a man of the house? He's 12 years old.
Right.
So as a 12-year-old, you're growing too fast. Now you're taking the responsibility of a man. You take out the trash, you got to do this stuff. Do we have to pay bills? Do they have to get a job? Sometimes when they get up to a certain age of 16, they get a job, and then most of that money goes to help out with the family. However, there are some times when they use their so-called disorder to receive that special check from Medicaid to help out with the family. We know the game plan with that. So he's been diagnosed all his life because we know that in the game, ADHD had to have hyperactive disorder because at first it was just ADD. The reason why they put the hyperactive disorder is because now they can add some type of pharmaceutical psychotropic drug to it. Adderall, Ritalin, whatever you name it, it's added because of the H came into hyperactive disorder when it was just attention deficit disorder. That's all it was. Now attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So let's talk about that. You put that in there, so the kid's on that. Now he's able to get a Medicaid number. So how much money he normally gets? The state probably sets it up where he gets probably a good $500, $600, maybe $700 a month. So that added extra income to the household family to take care of the bills. So he's been working because he got a diagnosis. Now he got a check. So he's on the payroll. So then we do all that. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking the people's hustle when they do that. But I want you to understand that there is a consequence because of that hustle. That hustle causes that person now, he's been working, taking checks. when he realizes, wait a minute, at 15, 16, someone tells him, hey, you know you could be emancipated getting off of this drug through the state. Well, I could do that. Yeah. All of a sudden, mom's been using this on me all this time so she can get money. Now they don't have the trust with the family because, Mom, you didn't tell me this what it was for. You just said I had a problem.
Right.
And here we go. So it goes down that cycle. So hopefully the points that what you're doing, and I know that what you're doing here on the source, and also with your sorority, the DST, you know, all them, you know, how y'all do it, and, you know, since I'm married to one. But I say that this is crucial time because, as you can see, it's not just in our African American community that we need to worry about. We're worrying about these kids right now have no fear. They have no respect. Individuals are just strong about self. Not just African American men, it's just that everyone is all about self now. If you look at Facebook, LinkedIn, any pages that you have, all of them taking selfies. Where did that come from? You know what I'm saying? So it's look at me, not look at we, look at me. And so when you have that in that community, and all of a sudden they don't get the respect or they don't get the right catcall or praise from others about themselves, then they go into this funk, they become more withdrawn, become more aggressive, and those avenues. And so then it is no longer, to me, dealing with just our African American community, it's dealing with humanity, because now we have someone in office that's willing to sit up there and tell stories and don't even care. You know, never have I heard or never have I seen government take on a reality show type of atmosphere to the point that it just emulates. He throws out tweets. Okay, what president tweets? What person does those things? Because if they're doing it at the highest level, then it's okay for a kid, 15, 16, to do what he does, to share his hate, frustration against a person that's not similar to his kin, skin tone, sexual orientation, what you have. And now it just sets back down to our kids. And then when it gets to the community, we have to how do we deal with that? A lot of us are trying to scramble to say, I got to take care of mine, you take care of yours. No one's doing like we did, like you said, the community, when you had your play cousins come in there and take care of you. No one's doing that. Now they do it from time to time, but then they expect something in return now.
Right.
Take care of my kid. All right, I should be getting something. You know, when it was always given. Thank you for sharing with my kid. I got you. Let's get some breakfast together. I'm cooking something this tonight. Come over. Let's hang out.
Right, back to the sense of community. Like, so it's lost it. And you're right. Like it's such. Well, you know, I think I've shared it before, but I've had my first experience where another Black woman was intimidated by me in this field. And I was so thrown off because I'm coming in this field and I'm like, yes, like I got this great idea. We're gonna all work together. There's a bunch of things that we need to do. And then I first received my first dosage of another Black woman really like struggling with me. And that was my first experience with it. And it just bothered me. And so like, you're right. Like, and my mindset stayed the same. My mindset was like, nope, my model is based on a sense of community. My model is based on like all of us collectively working together. I know I've shared my model with you. Like, it's so many hands on deck with the athlete, and it is still this sense of togetherness coming back. And I stay very, very true to that, because like I still believe that model works, that I cannot do it by myself, and that athlete or this Black male cannot do it by himself. That like there are people who literally need to be in place for us to actually run as God sees fit for us to like run like our time on earth. And it's sad because, you know, somewhere in it, a lot of people are passing down messages of like division. They're passing down messages of like, I gotta get mine, and it's just really just weird. And there's not a lot of conversations happening inside the home.
Yeah. And I guess for me, growing up in the hip hop generation, you can tell even through the music back then, the music was like really fun, get down, groove. You know, time to time they had their diss albums, but they were always in a retrospect. And you had two versions. You had your radio edit version, and then you had the one that you had to buy. So normally you know, you didn't buy the album, so you had you taped it off the radio, you know, back in the day when they had tapes, cassettes back then. So I just share that. So that's how old I am. You remember cassettes, all the reverses.
Well, I may be right behind you in that case.
but the videos too. You know, videos were different, man. They were all get groove, have a good time, man. You had to watch, you know, and let's put it like this: when MTV came around, before you had to watch your MTV Raps, you watched all the white videos too. So you knew about all these other groups, Ongo Boingo, the Culture Club, all that stuff. You knew all these groups and stuff like that, and then you were able to relate when you went back to school. And so you were able to have that sense of community even outside of your African American community. You had that sense of community to your white school colleagues and stuff like that, because you like some of the music too. You said, well, yeah, man, the Thompson Twins were cool, but I'm still down with Run DMC. Yeah, Run DMC is live, man, but you got to get into so you had that sense of, you could converse with different aspects because of different genre of music. So and today, man, it's just we have the rappers, me. I gotta bling like this. I gotta make it rain. You know, I gotta, the women were called a different thing. I mean, they're just out there. The terminology, ski. I mean, all this stuff just was more subliminal back when we grew up, but it's just more just like in your face now. Especially like Teen Mom. Okay, it was a stigma that someone was pregnant, but they was helping her out. Now all of a sudden, to get on a show, you need to be pregnant at 14.
Right.
They start doing it. Housewives and all that stuff. Housewives are fighting over crazy stuff. Like, a housewife that I knew who grew up was the one that you had a candy lady. Hooked you up with some candy.
I had a
told
free
you make sure that's all you can get.
Lady. It's out of control now. It's so out of control. It's so out of control now.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah, but I agree. And I think like that's why like it has to go back to the roots of home. It has to be. It has to stop where people are thinking that what goes on the house stays in the house. It has to go where people leave the Uncle Pete in the room. Like, and another issue that happens often in the Black communities that keeps people from actually talking is like the dismissal of alcohol. Like I remember I had to like let my mom know my uncle had an issue. Like I told her, I said, you could have gave me that doctor bill because I could have saved you half of that, the thousands on that bill of him staying in the hospital. And my mom was like, well, yeah, they were asking did he drink a lot. And I was like, no, I only see him drink now and then. I go, Mama, he's been drinking every day of my life. I was like, I'm in my 30s. And I've known him to drink every day of my life. And I said, so if you are years older than me, and I'm almost positive he's been drinking as long as you would have been living, you're the youngest. And I remember having to educate her on what that even looked like and how when it was time where it was a health related, he ended up having cirrhosis of the liver. And I was like, of course he does. And I was like, the man's been drinking every day of his life. But in her eyes, she was like, well, no, that's what the uncles and the brothers do. So that's normal. That's not mental health, right? That's not an alcohol issue, right? And it just went back down to not having any type of conversation. I know my grandmother has never, ever had any conversation about alcohol or mental health to any of them. And it just kind of goes back. It just keeps going.
It's your codependency, because I did that with my uncle. My uncle used to ride this beautiful cherry red BMW 525. Man, he kept it immaculately clean, but he loved to drink. So we like for him to drink to pass out so we can sneak the keys and go joyriding in his car, So one time we went joyriding in his car, man. We was sneaking, talking to girls. Yeah, it's my ride. Yeah, girl, look, I'm telling you, I'll pick you up. I'll pick you up. Boom, we hit something. So I was like, oh, man, we're going to be in trouble. So me and my best friend, we got the car back. We found this boulder, rolled up the boulder to measure it to about the size, threw some of my mom's nail polish, put it on the boulder. So we just sat in the garage praying. Okay, so when he finally woke up, came to, he said, dang, I hit that rock. We was cool then. We was like, yes. But that's all part of codependency, man, because we were sitting there wanting him to keep drinking alcohol to pass out so we can get something in return.
Yep.
And I realized that when I started doing substance abuse counseling, especially with DUI, and I said, that part need to be talked about, codependency, because it shows in other ways. When the woman is taking care of the check, the man used to take care of the check and take care of the bills, and he's drinking. Now she's taking care of the check and bills. She feels empowered by taking control of the money. All of a sudden, let's say he sobers up. He sobers up. Now he wants that back. She's going to feel a certain kind of way to say, I've been working on this for years, and now you're just taking that away from me. This was kind of empowering for me. Now you're taking it away from me. I'm going to see how I fix this. Hey, you've been doing so good. Let's go out tonight. Then go out to dinner. Hey, man, you've been sober for a while. Let's just have a little celebration. Give him that taste of that wine or that taste of that champagne. He don't relapse. So she's back on to doing what she wanted to do with the money while he's suffering, going through relapse prevention programs and going through all that stuff. That's codependency.
Yep.
You know, it happens in the community all the time.
Yep. Yeah, it's so real, and people don't realize that I often tell my clients that there's a benefit that has to be happening in order for you to keep something going. So if no one ever confronts you on how you've been acting, then that's a benefit. Because God forbid, if we just had mirrors not God forbid, but if we just had mirrors everywhere in our lives, we'd be messed up. Because people don't like to look at themselves and be held accountable, or to say, oh man, I played a big part in why this relationship is like where it is. Or I played a big part in someone having DUIs or anything like that. Like, we may not have put the alcohol up to them. We may not have made them go to a certain extent, but codependency, like you said, is really real. And there's a benefit behind it. So when we're not talking in families and when we're not having this conversation, then that says that I get the chance to not look at me too. So where if I keep quiet and I don't address some issues that are happening within my family line with you, then I don't have to talk about maybe that I was raped, or I don't have to talk about maybe that I struggle with relationships too, or I'm on my fourth marriage. I don't have to talk about that if we just kind of keep things how it's going. And that's a benefit to people. Keep us bound in this cycle. Terrible. It's not working. Bottom line, it's not working. So Darrell, I want to, are there any particular resources or books or I guess even with the symposium that you had that they can read up on, or maybe begin taking the steps to having more conversations, get into family counseling, individual counseling, and just maybe talking to other Black males or Black people in this community? Any resources you got?
Most of my resources were based upon just reading things from the State of Black America, from Tavis Smiley, or getting stuff from the Urban League that deals with issues pertaining to the Black family. And then for me, I would encompass that with some of the studies that we would have for dealing with anger management, or books that you can find pertaining to, and you can get these, you can Google these books. They're pretty well versed in just community-based therapy. We use books pertaining to how we do diagnosing, assessing, and doing treatment plans. So for me, it's always been a holistic approach towards developing this process. And I'm quite sure, just by looking up dealing with issues pertaining to African American men and boys, there will be a lot of good books out there that's done by certain Kwame Ture, Dr. One that was in our therapy books. I can't remember his name, and I'm sorry about that. And
Black person?
Yes.
A Black person?
He did family counseling. He was a family counselor, and he wrote Corey. Remember Corey and Corey?
Oh, I have to look up that. Oh, goodness. I feel like I missed that in that case.
My professor, Dr. Kurtz, worked with Corey, and they began to work on different books pertaining to African American families. And so she showed me that, and I'll probably provide that information. You check out my website. I will have stuff on there, because what we do now, like we said, our website, the Counseling Consulting Group of Georgia, we call the C2G2 Media Group. We began to develop our shows called The Next Episode, where we deal with issues pertaining to African American men and their families. And so, and you were on one of our shows during College Week.
Oh yeah, it was March Madness.
March Madness, yes. Yeah. And so, we talked about those things in March Madness, where you can see these athletes all of a sudden learning at the end of this is it. They're seniors. They don't make it to the dance. How do they transition out of no longer being a collegiate athlete back into the real world, or try to get to the next level, or they're going to go overseas and play ball. And so you can see all those emotions built up, and you always see cats crying or some people not saying anything. So it was a good time that we talked about those things, because that happens in the community. So our website is www.c2g2group.com. Very simple. We do things pertaining to that, where we do have blogs as well. So each episode will have a blog pertaining to that topic, and we talk about it. We talked about the sexual misconduct, how everybody was getting caught up in that game, from Russell Simmons, Al Franken, a lot of individuals up in there messing around because they said something about a female anatomy, or touched it, or just very vulgar with stuff they did, Matt Lauer. And so we try to do preventative ways of how not to get yourself caught up in the situation.
Yeah.
You know, how do you approach? How do you talk to them? How do you keep things away from being negative, especially in the working community? Because a lot of guys who get in those leadership roles, majority of them fall because of them doing some type of inappropriate conduct. You're looking at the mayor, Kwame Kilpatrick, lost his job, served time doing stuff. You're looking at how even the RNC chair, Michael Steele, when he lost his job as a Michael Steele, it was because of him having, they saying he's doing stuff where he's taking people to strip clubs. Now, they probably was doing that all along, but because Michael Steele is Michael Steele,
right?
They say he wrong for it, and they lost him. You saw a lot of people fall. Now they're going after the former mayor of Atlanta for his inappropriateness.
All of that stuff. It's so crazy. It's just a lot happening with the community. Hopefully, we'll keep on having different types of conversations that will really help address a lot of stuff. And I think it's back down to, like, if anything, the word of the day is, like, you got to have communication. You got to effectively communicate. Like, we just can't be out here talking. You have to, like, effectively communicate so that we can actually, like, make some things different. And it's not a sense of better. It's more different. Make things different and make things more in a equity type of unity, sense of community. Say your website again so, like, they can get in touch with you after.
www.c2g2group.com.
Okay.
I was going to say, if you look at, for us clinicians that are African American and are Latino, I would say to us minority clinicians, we are now the freedom riders of today. Hear me when I say it again. We are now the freedom riders of today that the civil rights movement had back then, because now it's no longer about civil rights, it's about mental rights. It's about mental awareness, about breaking the stigma, because these things that we share can transcend through all types of situations that you're going through at the beginning of your life. Like I told some of my clients, I said, look, you have an agent that will work on getting your contracts negotiated. You need a therapist who's going to be your mental agent to make sure you are focused in getting through those intangible obstacles that are going to be placed in your way to either make you have negative consequences or positive consequences. Because on all sports, and even not even in sports, just transitioning from a new job, you get a lot of money, and you got to deal with someone saying, well, you're making a little bit too much. Are you worthy of this position? So you got to deal with all that stress that comes on from that. Then, you might buy your new car, you're here in Atlanta, you want to show it off. So now you're dealing with issues pertaining to, is this person faking it till they make it? So you're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. Police is going to pull you over multiple times. Now I'm scared because I'm driving around in a nice car, and all of a sudden I look like this might happen.
So as we kind of just close up, I definitely want them to make sure they get in touch with you. So you have, like, an email address, like, that they also can get in touch with?
Yes. You can contact me at brooks35@gmail.com.
So I definitely thank you for definitely being on. And we'll keep the conversation going. And I'm going to just kind of really just focus on this for a couple of weeks and just really get the word out a lot more. I know there's some National Mental Health Symposiums coming up. I'll actually be speaking at that. And then there's a lot of more where we can actually, like, find in your local area where families can come for free to hear information and to hear different discussions about how to actually talk. And so, like, I'll speak at one in Atlanta on the 29th and 30th. And my particular topic is on culture barriers and men seeking mental health, and just kind of getting them talking a lot more. And so as that date gets closer, I'll probably get a flyer out or something. That's my newest mission. We're going to get these men talking.
Ms. Bryant, man, it's been a pleasure being on this show, man. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Continue that success because, like I said, we all work together. So you rise, I rise. It's nice to see you doing what you're doing, man. And hopefully this show continues the success that it does for 2 years.
Thanks. All right, well, I'll talk to you soon, and good luck with stuff, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thanks. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Source Nation, I really hope that this was a conversation that you enjoyed. Some of the tips that I pulled on, definitely the 5-5-5, that was awesome, right? What an awesome suggestion to just spend 5 minutes with your family, 5 minutes having conversation and asking them about their day. And so as you can see that having talks goes a long way. And that is definitely a myth. It is surely a myth that we can't talk. It's surely a myth that men have to be quiet. It's surely a myth that all Black men are angry. It's truly a myth that we have to be against each other and there's some competition. It's indeed more community wins more wars. And the war is not against each other, really. The war is against the ideas of what people believe about one another. And so I really hope that you pull this, and I really hope that you begin having some conversations. And if you are afraid to begin talking, then definitely get in touch with our guest, Darrell Brooks. Definitely reach out to me at www.b3mentalperformances.com. My email, jabryant1913@gmail.com. If you are interested in just kind of having some more conversations and need some just first steps to go. Where do I go if I'm a Black male? Is it okay to have a Black therapist? Is it okay to have a Black woman? Just where do I go just to start talking about these particular concerns that are going on within my family? Do I need a family counselor? What resources are out there? And so definitely reach out to our guests, reach out to me if you need to, and just so we can really heal a lot of the brokenness that's happening. Continue following me on any social media sites at Jaketra Bryant. Follow me on Twitter at Jaketra B. Definitely join and subscribe to my YouTube page, Jaketra Bryant, and continue tuning in next Monday at 6 p.m. with Family Mix Mondays as we continue to talk about a discussion of mental health in the Black community, because we got a lot of cycles to break. And so thank you, and I'm your host, Jaketra Bryant. Thanks for tuning in.
Get at me for features.